On February 28, successful businessman Tyler Pratt went to a meeting that was supposed to solve his financial problems. Together with his girlfriend Jordan, he arrived in an industrial area on the outskirts of the city, where old acquaintances were waiting for him. A few hours later, the police discovered his body at this location. Jordan, who miraculously survived, was taken to the hospital in critical condition. The only thing she could still say before losing consciousness were two names. These names would shock not only their relatives but all of Canada. Lucy Lai was born in 1995 in Shenzhen, one of China's largest economic centers. She was the eldest of three twin sisters, born only a few minutes apart. Her parents, yearning for a better life, soon decided to leave China and settle in Canada. However, the young daughters were left in the care of relatives. The family was only reunited 7 years later when the girls were brought to Toronto. Lucy's father, a man of strong character and business acumen, organized a driving school for immigrants and helped the newcomers obtain a driver's license. But the main source of the family's success was her mother, Winnie Lai. Thanks to her ability to find loopholes in tax legislation and manage capital wisely, her large financial company quickly established itself in the market. Winnie Lai earned a reputation as an influential player in the financial world. Over time, her influence became so great that business publications wrote about her, and her image appeared alongside Canada's leading politicians. The path to success demanded sacrifices, and the most important of these was family. Winnie was only minimally involved in raising her children, and when she did find time, it was only to monitor their performance. She demanded perfect results in all areas: studies, sports, and the development of intellectual and artistic skills. The daughters had to speak several languages, play musical instruments, understand finance, and win competitions and Olympiads. Mistakes and weaknesses were not forgiven by their mother. From childhood, Lucy tried to live up to these expectations, but soon realized that her successes were taken for granted. Her mother did not rejoice in her achievements. She considered them the norm. In this race for perfection, Lucy began to feel like an extra in her own family. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away from her world, Oliver Karafa lived in a small Slovak town. His family was not wealthy, but his parents strove to give their son a good education and the opportunity to build a decent life. At the age of 8, he found himself in Canada, where the family had emigrated in search of new prospects. Unlike Lucy, his childhood was not planned according to protocol. Oliver grew up free and independent, but as a teenager, he began to deviate from the planned path. He was drawn to risk and forbidden pleasures. He was looking for the adrenaline he could get by breaking rules. He was not interested in his studies, and discipline seemed unnecessary to him. Lucy's and Oliver's paths crossed when they attended the same school. She was an example of a diligent student. He was the one who often violated discipline. Despite the obvious differences between the two, a friendship developed. Oliver was someone who could afford not to meet expectations, and Lucy liked that. For her, he was the first person who didn't judge her based on her achievements. Over time, their relationship developed into a romance. It was a first feeling, far removed from calculations and family pressure. However, like many teenage stories, this romance was short-lived. They quickly realized they were too different, and the future they envisioned did not suit them. After graduating from high school, their paths separated forever. Lucy followed her mother's plan and enrolled in finance at a renowned university. A career in the family business, success, and status awaited her. Oliver chose a different path. His risk-taking and desire for quick money led him into a world that is difficult to escape. At the age of missing number in original German text, he got behind the wheel while severely intoxicated. That night, the car he was driving crashed into a lamppost. A passenger died instantly. Another passenger was seriously injured. Oliver himself was almost unharmed, but his life was changed forever. The court sentenced him to 5 years in prison and imposed a 15-year driving ban. Years later, fate brought him back together with Lucy. But this time, their meeting was not an innocent teenage crush. Now they would be connected by shared secrets, crime, and the pursuit of a life that always costs more than it seems. Lucy had enrolled at one of Canada's best universities and chosen to study finance and global economics. However, this decision was not her own. Her mother had predetermined which field of study her children should pursue, as they would hold key positions in the family business in the future. Lucy recognized that her studies were not a path to self-fulfillment, but just another stage in a plan she hadn't chosen. Throughout her studies, she was monitored and urged to achieve exceptional results. It was not enough to finish her studies. She had to do it with the best grades. Every mistake was considered a failure, and the slightest deviation from the planned path led to her mother's disappointment. Lucy did not give up and continued. She received awards for excellent academic performance, completed internships at leading companies, and created an impeccable resume. After graduation, she immediately gravitated towards working in the family business. Winnie instructed her daughter to familiarize herself with the company's financial operations and gradually take over part of the management. In the eyes of others, she was the epitome of success, but she herself felt trapped. While Lucy lived in a world of strict discipline and career pressure, Oliver, while serving his sentence for the accident, made new acquaintances and connections. Oliver's cellmates included people involved in illegal businesses, the stolen car trade, and various fraudulent schemes. They quickly recognized his penchant for risk and ambition. He listened to them, learned, and memorized procedures and ways to circumvent the law. This knowledge would later help him build his own shady businesses. In 2019, Oliver was released after 5 years of imprisonment. The return to a normal life proved more difficult than he had expected. Without education and official professional experience, legal ways of earning money did not bring the desired income. Furthermore, the driving ban deprived Oliver of his accustomed freedom of movement. During this time, he looked for ways to start a new life. He tried working as a model to generate income. His photos began appearing in advertising campaigns for small agencies. Although this didn't bring in much money, it allowed him to project the image of a successful man. At this moment, his gaze fell back on Lucy. They hadn't seen each other in years. In school, she had been a promising, ambitious girl predicted to have a brilliant future, but now she had changed. Her social media page was full of pictures of lavish parties, travels, and expensive restaurants. She had become a popular blogger. Her followers grew and brands offered her collaborations. Oliver decided to write to her. The conversation began with memories of the past and then moved to a discussion about life. Lucy confessed that she had formally achieved everything her mother wanted, but she didn't feel happy. Her career had been built on the expectations of others. Oliver, for his part, described himself as someone who had been through difficulties and now wanted to change his life. Their meeting took place a few days after their first conversation. They sat across from each other in a restaurant and talked about how much they had changed. Oliver seemed confident and spoke of new prospects. Lucy listened and was attracted by his freedom. He was not bound by corporate standards. He did not live by the rules set by his family. A few weeks after their meeting, Lucy made a decision that surprised even herself. She packed her bags and moved in with Oliver. In one fell swoop, she broke all ties to her previous life and put an end to her mother's plans. She chose the unknown rather than a predetermined future. At that moment, she did not realize that she was embarking on a path that would lead not to freedom, but to disaster. Lucy's decision to leave the family was a shock to her mother. Winnie was unaccustomed to disobedience. Everyone around her adhered to the established rules, and she expected the same from her daughters. When she learned that Lucy had decided to live with Oliver, a man with a criminal record, Winnie reacted fiercely. In the blink of an eye, her bank accounts were frozen and all financial income was cut off. Lucy did not return. On the contrary, this decision only strengthened her desire to prove that she could live without her mother's help. However, it quickly became clear that her independence was an illusion. After only a few weeks, she realized that blogging alone could not earn her enough money. She was accustomed to a high standard of living, but now her financial stability depended solely on Oliver. Unlike her, he had no fears. He confidently stated that he had sources of income and that she shouldn't worry. Oliver said he earned his money through investments, buying and selling cars, rare goods, and other lucrative deals. Lucy asked no questions. She wanted to believe that it was really that simple. Gradually, she became more and more involved in Oliver's affairs. Because of a court order, Oliver could no longer drive, so Lucy became his personal driver. At first, it seemed like a minor thing. She sometimes waited in the car for him while he took care of his business. Eventually, she noticed that the routes were always different and the trips mostly took place in the evenings. When Oliver first asked Lucy to sign documents in her name, she hesitated. She was worried because the documents concerned the purchase of cars she had never seen. He explained that this was part of his business. He exported cars and resold them to wealthy clients. He assured her that it was legal and only required a few workarounds. Lucy did not object. She signed papers, created invoices, and helped with transfers. While Lucy thought she was running a business, she was actually already part of the criminal schemes. Oliver used her status to give his deals an appearance of legitimacy, but she had not yet realized how far this went. Despite the lack of financial stability, one could say the couple lived in luxury. Their apartment was in an upscale Toronto neighborhood. Their cars were changed every few months. In restaurants, they didn't look at the prices. Designer clothes, jewelry, expensive trips, all this became their usual lifestyle. Lucy didn't notice that she was gradually becoming dependent not only on Oliver's money but also on him. He instilled in her that they were a team, that she couldn't maintain this standard of living without him. She believed him and didn't realize that she was already on the brink of disaster. In the spring of 2020, Oliver received an offer that could take his business to the next level. Through mutual friends, he met Tyler Pratt, a man who at first glance looked like a typical successful entrepreneur. He had several companies that offered nutritional supplements and investment projects, among other things. However, his real income came from a different source. Tyler was a key figure in the Canadian illegal substance business, which he imported and distributed in large quantities. Tyler was looking for new investments. After his divorce, he wanted to legalize part of his assets and gradually withdraw from the shadow economy. He needed a reliable partner who could offer him a promising business. Oliver was the perfect fit for this role. He was young, ambitious, had connections, and seemed confident in his success. Oliver invited Tyler to dinner, where he presented his company and introduced himself as an experienced player in logistics and international transactions. He spoke convincingly about opportunities in trade, investments in imported cars and real estate, but the main topic was a new idea: the supply of safety equipment. At that time, the world was in chaos due to a pandemic. States, private clinics, and companies urgently purchased medical masks, protective suits, gloves, and other equipment. Oliver presented a project that he believed could bring in millions. He planned to buy protective equipment in Asia and sell it at inflated prices in Western markets. It looked like a 100% win-win situation. Demand was huge and suppliers were ready to pay cash. Tyler was excited about the idea. Although he was an experienced businessman, he was unfamiliar with the legal market. Oliver convinced him that he could organize the deals with the help of his connections. Tyler invested the first $200,000 in the project, expecting to quickly double or even triple his investment in the coming weeks. Oliver continued to maintain the illusion of being actively engaged. He showed his partner fake purchase reports, scans of contracts with supposedly reliable suppliers, and bank documents confirming the transactions. Tyler was confident that his money was working. A month later, Oliver said that the project needed to be expanded and more investment was required. He said demand was growing, which meant there was an opportunity to earn even more money. Tyler, euphoric about these prospects, invested another $500,000. He did not realize that he had just signed his own death warrant. A few weeks after the second investment, Tyler noticed the first warning signs. He transferred the money, but the delivery of the safety equipment never began. Oliver repeatedly assured him that everything was under control, but the excuses became less and less convincing. He cited logistical delays, complicated customs checks, and bureaucratic delays. Tyler was not a naive man. He knew how business worked and was not used to losing money. As his demands for delivery documents became more persistent, Oliver realized the situation was spiraling out of control. Panic set in because Tyler demanded accountability and Oliver had nothing to show for it. In his desperation, Oliver turned to Lucy. He explained that they urgently needed to find a way to appease Tyler and buy time. The only solution they could think of was check fraud. Lucy took an old form from her mother's papers, wrote a check for $1.5 million, and requested this amount from the Lai family account. She was sure that the money would disappear into her mother's financial flows and she wouldn't even notice the disappearance. However, the bank became suspicious. A manager who knew the Lai family well noticed the absence of Winnie's signature and requested confirmation of the transaction. The transaction was then suspended. The plan with the fake check had failed. Lucy and Oliver were in a desperate situation. Tyler no longer believed their explanations. He gave them a final deadline. Either he would get his money or there would be severe consequences. Oliver quickly realized that the only way to solve the problem was to eliminate Tyler. He discussed the situation with Lucy, but her reaction was far from enthusiastic. She realized they had backed themselves into a corner, but murder seemed extreme to her. However, Oliver assured her that they had no other choice. Tyler was not the type to forgive deception, and their lives could be in danger. A plan was quickly conceived. They invited Tyler and his girlfriend Jordan to a meeting, ostensibly to discuss a new project. Oliver said he had found a way to compensate for their losses and get his money back. Tyler didn't believe it, but decided to give Oliver one last chance. He agreed to come to the meeting. On February 28, 2021, around 6 p.m., Tyler and Jordan arrived at the agreed location, a warehouse in an industrial area. They arrived in their SUV unaware that an ambush awaited them outside the gate. Oliver had prepared in advance. He bought a used car with cash to leave no trace. They also acquired a burner phone to contact Tyler. Lucy put on a wig to alter her appearance. As Tyler got out of the car, Oliver immediately drew his weapon. The first shots were aimed at Jordan. He knew that the investigation would take a completely different turn if he eliminated the witness. The bullets hit the woman in the chest and she fell, losing consciousness. Tyler froze on the spot, realizing this was the end. Oliver, giving him no time to react, aimed his weapon at him and pulled the trigger without hesitation. A few shots and Tyler collapsed on the ground, instantly unconscious. Lucy stood beside him without intervening, but she already knew there was no turning back. Her entire life had been turned upside down in that moment. They were not just fraudsters, they were now murderers. Oliver quickly went over to Tyler's SUV to see if his girlfriend was still alive. When he saw that she showed no signs of life, he placed her body next to the car and told Lucy to leave. Oliver and Lucy were confident that they had eliminated all witnesses. They left the hangar, leaving two motionless bodies behind, and fled, certain that no one would connect them to the crime. However, an hour after the attack, something happened that they could not have foreseen. Around 7:20 p.m., a passing truck driver noticed a woman lying at the entrance of the hangar. It was Jordan. Despite her injuries, she not only survived but was able to move, which caught the attention of a passerby. The man immediately called the police and an ambulance. When the paramedics arrived at the scene, they found Jordan still breathing. She was unconscious, but her pulse remained constant. The doctors didn't know how long she had been lying on the cold concrete floor, but one thing was certain. She had miraculously survived the attack. She was taken to a hospital where surgeons performed an emergency operation. The police quickly assessed the situation. Tyler's body was found in the hangar. He had died instantly from multiple gunshot wounds. There were neither surveillance cameras nor witnesses, but the key to solving the crime lay in the hospital room. While Jordan fought for her life, investigators began their inquiries. They checked her phone calls, her texts, and her last movements. Within a few hours, it became clear that she and Tyler had been in contact with Oliver before the attack. Their meeting was not accidental. It was a planned meeting organized by the person who was now the main suspect. At this time, Oliver and Lucy did not yet know that their plan had gone wrong. They had been following the news, saw the headlines about the unknown murderer, and were sure that everything had gone perfectly. But when the news anchor mentioned that one of the victims had survived and was now in stable condition, their confidence was replaced by fear. Lucy was stunned, and Oliver began pacing around the room. It became clear to him that Jordan had seen their faces, heard their voices, and knew who the meeting had been with. If she regained consciousness, the police would have a full description of their attackers. Now the only thing they could do was run away. Oliver contacted his connections. He knew who could get fake passports and organize a secure exit. They had money. The large sum stolen from Tyler was still in their accounts. The only question was speed. A few hours later, they met with the people who had prepared their new documents. Lucy received a fake passport in the name of a Philippine citizen. Oliver became a Hungarian citizen. With these documents, they could fly to Europe unhindered. Their first destination was Prague. They chose it because it was suitable as a transit stop. High tourist traffic, low suspicion. They took a hotel room for a short time, hoping to lay low and figure out what to do next. The first few days were relatively calm. They tried not to draw attention and only went out when necessary, but the fear never left them. Oliver constantly checked the news, waiting for an international search warrant. Lucy barely spoke a word. The realization that they were no longer just fraudsters but also murderers haunted her. A few days later, they moved to Bratislava and then to Budapest. They thought the frequent changes of location would allow them to cover their tracks, but in reality, they only gave the police more clues. The temporary feeling of security turned out to be an illusion. They were sure that the police would not be able to find them quickly, but after a few weeks, the situation changed. International services began working, and their trail gradually narrowed. The criminals did not yet know that an arrest was only a matter of time. While Oliver and Lucy tried to go into hiding in Europe, the Canadian police worked continuously. The first clue to solving the crime was the phone calls. Technicians determined that the SIM card Oliver used for communication had been purchased the day before at a store in Toronto. Further investigations led detectives to an individual who confirmed Lucy, who, unaware of the criminals' plans, provided them with another SIM card for use. After questioning, she stated that it was Lucy who had asked her for the card. This was serious evidence against them. The next piece of evidence was found thanks to video surveillance. Investigators examined the footage from the area where the hangar was located and determined that a few days before the attack, a car drove there that was registered to a fictitious person, but the silhouettes of occupants resembling Oliver and Lucy could be seen. Furthermore, cameras at their apartment recorded them leaving on the evening of February 28th and returning late at night. This strengthened the police's suspicion. After Jordan regained consciousness, the investigators received confirmation. She could clearly remember who had attacked her. Lucy and Oliver were identified as the assailants. This was enough to issue an arrest warrant. The Canadian police forwarded the information to Interpol, and within a few days, Oliver and Lucy were wanted internationally. Their description, photos, and last known details were forwarded to European law enforcement agencies. Meanwhile, the couple continued to hide, but their movements did not go unnoticed. The Hungarian police received a tip and began tracking suspicious foreigners matching the description. Through a mistake by Oliver, their escape was soon halted. When he paid the rent for the apartment, he used fake documents that made the owner suspicious. The owner reported the suspicious tenants and their identities were checked. When it turned out that they were on an international wanted list, a team of agents traveled to their location. Oliver and Lucy had no time to act. They were arrested directly in the apartment. Lucy tried to explain that it was a mistake, but the officers already knew exactly whom they were arresting. A few hours later, they were taken to a detention center where the extradition process to Canada began. Their escape was over. Now they had to answer for their actions. In the spring of 2024, the trial against Lucy Lai and Oliver Karafa attracted significant public attention. The case became one of the most discussed in Canada. Two young people who could have led successful lives chose a criminal path that ended in murder. The trial lasted several weeks. The prosecution presented a detailed indictment. They submitted evidence linking Lucy and Oliver to the murder of Tyler Pratt and the attempted murder of Jordan. Phone records, surveillance footage, financial transactions, and the testimony of a surviving witness were presented. Lucy's defense strategy consisted of shifting the blame onto Oliver. She claimed she had nothing to do with planning the crime, knew nothing of the intent to kill Tyler, and was herself a victim of manipulation. She claimed Oliver controlled everything, and she merely followed him without noticing the magnitude of what was happening. However, the evidence contradicted this. The prosecution presented proof that Lucy was actively involved in the fraud, helped hide money, organized a meeting with Tyler, and even attempted to forge financial documents. The fact that she ran away and used fake passports strengthened the prosecution's argument. Oliver, on the other hand, refused to testify. His defense attempted to prove that the crime was not planned and was the result of a conflict, but the court did not accept these arguments. The final blow for Lucy came from the video footage showing her concealing her face when she met Tyler, as well as the evidence that she had purchased the SIM card used to set the trap. This evidence ultimately discredited her version of events. The verdict was harsh but predictable. Oliver and Lucy were found guilty of murder, fraud, and fleeing justice. Both received life sentences with the possibility of parole after a maximum of 25 years. The trial was over, but its consequences were discussed in the community for a long time. Lucy, who once lived in a world of luxury and privilege, now found herself in a prison cell. Oliver, accustomed to adrenaline and adventure, lost his freedom forever. Their fates became an example of how greed and the desire for quick money can lead to collapse. Society was divided into two camps. Some saw Tyler Pratt as a victim, a man who trusted the wrong people and paid for it with his life. His family and relatives defended him, emphasizing that he had tried to leave his past behind and enter a legitimate business. Others believed that he was responsible for his own death because he knew whom he was dealing with and knowingly engaged in dubious financial transactions. Lucy Lai became a symbol of downfall. She was born into a privileged world and had the chance to lead a wealthy life without crime. Yet she chose a different path. She ran away from her mother, got involved in fraud, and ultimately criminality. Her mother, Winnie Lai, refused to comment after her daughter's arrest. Her status in the business world was shaken, but she chose to remain silent, and over time she virtually erased her daughter's name from her life and did not participate in her defense. Oliver, on the other hand, was not an unexpected criminal to many. His path began with difficulties as a young man. To most people, he was a predictable criminal who was bound to end up in prison sooner or later. This incident ruined the lives of several people. Tyler died. Jordan lost not only her loved one, but also her unborn child. According to the investigation, Jordan was pregnant at the time of the crime. The story, which began with the greed for quick money, ended in tragedy. Everyone involved in this story ultimately paid their price: money, freedom, life. Thank you for watching and take care of yourselves.